The forest, a mixture of pine, cedar, spruce, fir, interspersed with aspen, maple, and birch. It is the Northwoods. Rocks, among the oldest in the world, created in molten fire, shaped by glaciers. Water, in motion, driven by wind. Propelled by gravity through an elemental land. Ancient peoples dwelt here. At different times, the Cree, the Dakota, and the Ojibwe lived along the North Shore, existing in balance with the land. In the 17th century, French explorers arrived. Radisson and Grossier opened the North Shore to the European fur trade. For the early settlers, the thin soil, the terrain, the climate would support little agriculture. Commercial fishermen on the Big Lake harvested millions of pounds of whitefish and lake trout. Vast stands of white and red pine fell to the axe and saw. Well into the 20th century, most travel along the shore was by boat. The coastal villages remained isolated. But in 1925, completion of U.S. Highway 61 from Duluth to Canada opened the North Shore to year-round travel. The highway also brought the possibility that the shore would be almost completely settled, with the public denied access to the lake. Creation and preservation of parklands along the magnificent North Shore got underway. Now there are 8 state parks on the shore between Duluth and Canada. In effect, they are every person's country estate. The parks have certain characteristics in common. At the same time, each has its unique aspects and special charms. Gooseberry Falls is the first state park north of Duluth. From the highway bridge, you see the Upper Falls. It drops about 30 feet into its pool. From the other side of the bridge, looking downstream, you have a top view of the larger Lower Falls. From below the falls, you get an even stronger sense of the power of rushing water. 2 tiers. A nearly 60-foot plunge into the last pool. But there is beauty here besides the falls. In all seasons, trails lead you to many perspectives. Though Gooseberry is one of Minnesota's most heavily visited parks, nature continues to thrive. Gooseberry Park began in the mid-1930s, when the state of Minnesota purchased 638 acres of cut-over land. By the early 1990s, the park would be nearly 3 times larger. In the depths of the Great Depression, young men from the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, transformed Gooseberry. For 6 years, they cleared trails, laid water lines, built steps. The young men crafted stone and logs into buildings that are still used and admired. They constructed the Great Retaining Wall for the highway, 100 yards long, massive stones, some weighing several tons, This Depression-era local craftsmanship has earned the park a place on the National Registry of Historic Places. The Gooseberry River begins in the peat and spruce bogs of Superior National Forest. It flows quietly for several miles through the park, and then comes upon the tumult of the uppermost falls, an hour's hike above the highway. There is mystery here, small caves scoured out of rock by the river, water working through the ages. Daily, and with the seasons, the river level varies, and so does its behavior, from the rip-roaring to the quietly polite. As the Gooseberry wanders downstream from the main falls, it broadens before reaching Lake Superior. In the old days, a lumbering railroad chugged along the west face of the valley and dumped huge logs into the river. Most North Shore streams shoot directly into Superior, but the Gooseberry flows into the lake at an angle. Behind the ridge, the river has built up bars of gravel and sediment, protecting the estuary. Just south of the river, a lava flow shoreline brings you intimately into contact with the lake and its moods. One of the moods is anger. The steam barge Belle P. Cross now lies under the waves a half-mile offshore, victim of a 1903 spring storm. Visitors to Gooseberry State Park can find a spectrum of experiences. In every season, there is something to be learned, something to be shared, something to remind us all that people and nature can exist in harmony. The quietest things can be acts of discovery, and there is much to discover. About 20 miles farther up the North Shore, we find lava flows that have fractured over time into vertical columns. Palisade Head towers 200 feet above the lake. Peregrine falcons might be seen. Inland, the Sawtooth Mountains punctuate the horizon. 4 inland lakes beckon. The high cliff pattern is repeated at Shovel Point, near the outlet of the Baptism River. There, the river broadens into a shady bay. Peacefulness, quietude. About 40 miles farther on, there is a special setting. Great cascades. Pool to pool to pool. Mosses, ferns, and cedars cling to the walls of the gorge, flourishing in its misty mini-climate. On the Canadian border, within Grand Portage Indian Reservation, memory of the past is almost tangible. The high falls of the Pigeon River was here before the Ojibwe people. They had to learn to live with the river and the land, fulfilling their needs from the living storehouse. The Ojibwe culture enabled the explorers to survive in the New World. Listen to Minnesota's tallest waterfall. It spoke to the people of the past in thunderous tones. And it speaks to us today. The parks of the North Shore have many voices. waiting to be heard. They are a chorus of many parts, if you will linger to listen.